Okay, well, welcome back, everybody. So then, yesterday we got to take a look at the periodic inventory, the FIFO costing method. So again, the second part is going to be the LIFO. LIFO is, again, the same exact methodology. It's the second type of costing method. So again, just a reminder of what the difference between the costing methods are is that now that we're looking at last in or first out, just imagine having non-perishable goods. It doesn't matter whether you sell the first batch or the second batch first, but usually at that point, even if they don't have an expiration point, general rule of thumb is usually the latest and the greatest model usually sells out first. So, for instance, that we talked about the iPhone, or for instance, we talked about a broomstick, right? We have two of them. They do the same functionality. They're the same exact brand and everything, except one of them just has a newer look to it. And usually the one with the newer look gets bought out a lot quicker. So with that being said, now let's go ahead and actually apply it to a scenario. Now this is going to be the last in, first out. So again, the formula that you're going to be applying here are identical. It's just when we get to the bottom half, that's where we're going to actually starting to look how to cost it out different or calculate which batch goes first differently. So with that being said, just filling out the worksheet itself, the formulas are pretty much identical. It looks just like this. We're going to deal with the purchase price, the total cost, as well as the cost per item, because that's the first thing that we got to do is we got to make our batches and make a cost per item for each batch, okay? And then from there, we can determine what order we choose to sell out our items. And then, of course, the goods available is when you have your total net purchases plus your beginning inventory. And then, of course, to find out what the cost of goods sold is you're going to take your total goods available and subtract out the ending inventory. So again, ending inventory will always be given, okay? If not, cost of goods sold will be given, and you'll just end up solving for ending inventory. You have to have one of those components, but most oftentimes, you will definitely have someone who goes physically down to the basement and tell you how much actual inventory you actually have left. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started with this example here. So again, same exact scenario, except we're going to be applying the costing method a little differently. So the first one here is we're going to be is June 1st. We made a purchase of 100 toys at $1.25, and freight was $25. Okay, and then on June 11th, you made another purchase of 100 toys at $1.28. And the freight was $26. And then lastly, at the end of the 15th, you had a total of 80 toys available. Okay? So again, journalizing this, we're going to be utilizing the purchase expense and the freight expense. And depending on how you bought the items will be your determining credit. So again, we will be practicing both concepts from the very beginning of chapter 5, where we learned how to journalize our purchases, and we're going to actually apply it to the actual scenario next week when we actually finish looking at all the different costing methods. That's when we're going to practice journalizing, the inventory worksheet, and then actually calculating. Okay. So with that being said, the first thing that we have here is that the 100 items that were bought at $1.25 with the freight cost of $25. So again, same thing as yesterday. The purchase price is going to be your quantity times your unit price, which in this case is 100 times $1.25, which gives you 125, okay? Then we add our freight to get us our total cost, which 125 plus 25 gives you 150. And then last but not least, we need to solve for the cost per item. This is very important, especially when we're dealing with, partial of the inventory that's being sold or partial of the items being sold. So just remember, understanding, like if you're buying shipments, right, you can understand that each batch is one box. If you're digging into a box and not selling the whole thing, you can expect that you need that cost per item. So the cost per item is going to be the total cost divided by the total quantity, or in this case, just quantity. So it's going to be the 150 divided by 100, which gives you $1.50. Okay, so that's just first one's there. Then the next one is going to be on June 11th. We purchased another 100 toys at $1.28, and the freight is $26. So again, when we're dealing with this type of, when we're dealing with periodic inventory, it's also important that you remember the rule is that you're not going to combine them. You're going to separate each cost, because purchase price is a separate cost than from a freight cost, because you generally don't pay, usually freight isn't included in the purchase price. It's usually separated, okay? So there you go. Same thing, same here. Then now we're actually going to plug it into our inventory worksheet. So again, we have 100 items for $1.28, giving you $1.28 plus 26, which should give you 156. And then plus the 156 divided by the 100 items, you should get $1.56. So again, once we've reached the end of a given period, or you are actually going to go ahead and schedule your whatever it is, daily, weekly, or bi-weekly, monthly, physical count. Someone's going to go down to the basement or warehouse to actually physically count how many items you actually have left. Then that's where you're going to go ahead and total up each column. So the first column that we're going to look at is how much total quantity we have for a whole total of 200. We also total up the amount of purchase price or purchase expense. So in this case, 125 plus 128 gives you a grand total of 153. And then, of course, we total up our total freight expense to give us a total of $51 in freight. And then lastly, our total amount or our total cost, which here we just add those two numbers together or add the whole column up, and you should get 304. So again, once we've done this, then now we can go ahead and plug these numbers in to the little table down below to solve for our net purchases as well as our cost of goods sold. So the first thing that we're going to do is we understand that we need to, that this whole top part right here is only entailing purchases only, okay? And we talked about yesterday what happens when we have inventory on hand. That's only when you have beginning inventory. So in this case, we need to keep our purchases separately and we need to keep our beginning inventory separately. So there you go. Now we're going to bring it down and we're going to actually calculate how much total purchases of the inventory we actually have. Now again, we're not going to go over purchase returns allowances until next week. But so here we're just going to assume there were no purchases. Nothing was wrong with the toys. So we bought a total 200 at 253. Okay. No returns and allowances. So therefore my items here is still going to stay the same. And then I'm going to add my freight, which does not increase quantity, but it does increase the cost. So now I have my total net purchases as my 200 items at $304. Then, because we don't have beginning inventory, that's where we're going to go ahead and plug in or bring down the information from above for the net purchases to get our grand total of goods available. And there you go. You got your 200 available goods, and it's going to cost you a total of $304. Now, with a little given segment here, if on June 15, you have a total of 80 units remaining, okay, the formula for cost of goods sold is going to be your total goods available minus your ending inventory, which in this case, if we started out with 200 and we have only 80 left, we're going to be left with 120. So now we're actually going to go ahead and solve for the 120. So this is where the complications between understanding which batch to take out from first. So by understanding Lifo, okay, this time instead of the first batch that you purchase is going to be the first one that you take out, it's actually going to be the last one that you purchased, and those are going to be coming out. So if you look at my little inventory or my purchases little window on the top right, we're going to go from bottom to top. Okay, we're going to sell out the last ones that we actually purchased. Okay, usually what's going to happen here is that you're trying to cost out your most expensive items first, or depending on how the scenario is, you're trying to get rid of the most expensive because at the day you want to hold on to the ones that you're going to make the most profit for. Okay. So in this case, that's just one concept or one idea that you can use the Lifo method for, is if in case you do see a trend where every time you buy your inventory, it gets more and more and more pricier and more expensive, and it costs you a little more. But in this case, yes, and you definitely want to save the ones that actually gonna make you a bigger profit at the end, so then you can rack up your profits later on. But at the end of the day, once you get rid of the entire inventory, at the end of the day, whether you sell at a higher price or sold at a lower price, it's at the end of the day, you're going to just sell out them in general. So it doesn't matter which method actually works for you. Again, it only applies on what the product is and how it works for your company. So again, looking at this on the right side of the inventory, we have two batches. One batch for $1.50 and one batch for $1.54. Okay. Is that 54? Yes, okay. So we're looking here and we're going to determine, well, which batch did we purchase last? Okay, because usually the last in are usually the first to go. So in this case, we're going to take the last one, which is the bottom one, and we're going to go ahead and get rid of that one. So 100, since we sold a total of 120 items, our first notion is we're going to sell out the whole entire batch. So we're going to clear out that whole entire first 100 items, which we already know it's going to cost you $1.54, which we already know it's going to cost you $154 in general. Okay. Now, once we've already calculated that first 100, once we get rid of that batch, all we have left now is 20 items to sell. So we're going to take our 20 items, and now this is where cost per item comes into play. Because we're not taking out the whole entire batch, we're only taking a portion out of that batch. So therefore, we need to look at it at an individualistic scale. If we sold a total of 20 items, how much would it cost me per item? And this is where we apply the quantity times the unit price again. And that's where we do 20 times $1.50 to get us a grand total of $32. even, okay? So again, $154 plus my $30 is going to give me a grand total of $184 even, right? And then our last step here is to solve for our ending balance, which you have two ways to solve for it. You can either go up to the top into your inventory worksheet and multiply the remaining units left by the unit price or cost per item to get you a total of 120. Or you could just simply take what you know and subtract it. If you know you only have $304 in goods available and you know you sold exactly $184, you can just subtract the cost of goods sold from the goods available to get you your 120. All right. So again, all of this is straightforward except the way that you actually calculate the cost per item is what's going to be the difference. Okay? Is everyone okay and clear?
Yes.
Okay. So let's go ahead and, okay, so once we've also finished completing our worksheet, number one thing that you have to complete is the conversion entry, okay? We'll notice this, okay? You need to complete your conversion entry. So in this case, again, we need to recognize because we are originally purchasing our inventory as an expense, once you reach the end of the period and we've already done our periodic inventory worksheet, right? We had someone go down to the basement and took a physical count. That's where we can now convert our expense and actually recognize that we actually have inventory or actually transfer them into the inventory. But we can't transfer every single item that we have because the whole concept here is we also sold some along the way. So that's where the inventory comes into play because that's what we made purchases for. And then we have a cost of goods sold because, again, we talked about cost of goods sold. It is a direct link to actually selling your inventory. And then lastly, you're going to have to zero out your purchase expense and your freight expense, okay? Like, remember when we talked about this? Imagine that every time you make a purchase of something, right, or inventory, you're going to dump it all in the purchase expense bucket. Once we finally have taken things out of the purchase expense bucket when we sell our items, or however you want to look at it, we're going to physically take our bucket and we're going to dump some of it into inventory and we're going to dump some of it into cost of goods sold. Okay, so that's just that idea there. So with that being said, once we completed that bottom section, in our inventory worksheet, that is pretty much the things that we're going to be looking at to plug in our conversion entry because we've already solved for it. There's no need to have to double solve for something that you already know. So the ending inventory will always be the one that you're actually going to be plugging in as inventory. And it's all for one thing I forgot to mention is that when you are transferring from a purchase expense to an inventory item, right, you don't shove everything into inventory. You're going to actually have to break it down specifically on what kind of inventory item it is. So in this case, my scenario said that I actually purchased toys. In this case, when I make my conversion entry, I need to recognize that it belongs into the toys section under my inventory. So remember when we talked about main accounts, inventory would be the main account. Now that's too broad. I know it's inventory, but if you break it down into other sub-accounts, you're going to notice that if you are that kind of store where you're selling multiple items, you want to make sure that you actually break it down. So if you're a toy store owner, or you're just, a regular grocery store, or like something like Walmart, right? You don't only sell toys. You sell groceries. You sell electronics. You sell houseware goods. Okay, so if that makes any sense, inventory is just a broad term. But if I didn't mention exactly what the item is, your assumption is it is inventory. Okay. So now that we finally have our ending inventory for toys, which we've already calculated, we know that we had a total of 80 items. But in grand total, it's going to cost me a total of 120 items. Right? Then we're looking at our cost of goods sold. That's exactly what we calculated in our inventory worksheet. We decided to look at inventory, and we decided that if we're going to get rid of the last batches, how much did it cost me to sell each item? And in this case, we sold a whole total of 120 items at $184. Okay? And then, of course, you're going to zero out or dump out your purchase expense and your freight expense. So purchase expense is going to be your total purchases amount, which is $253, plus the freight expense being a total of $51. And if you double check this work, your totals, debits, and your total credits should be $304. They both equal on both sides. Okay? So that is it for this is it for the whole concept under Lifo. Any questions so far? Okay. No? Okay. So now I'm going to talk to you what happens when you have beginning inventory. So again, in yesterday's instance, or yesterday's example, when we looked at receiving or having beginning inventory, what happens is that once we transfer it over, beginning inventory just happens to be one of those items that we sell out first because of the first in, first out rule. Now, this part is going to be slightly different because when we transfer our beginning inventory into a last in, first out scenario, we need to understand that that is going to be pretty much our first batch that we have, that we have in our inventory. So when we actually understand how Lifo works, we do not start from what we have in our inventory as is. We're going to understand that our purchases are actually going to be the ones that you sell out first. And then if it happens that we actually end up coming back to the beginning inventory, then that's what happens. But in this case, let's go ahead and go through the scenario so that it makes a little more sense. So again, here on June 15th, we recognized that we had a total of 80 toys costing us a total of $120, right? And we know that it cost us $1.50 to sell out. Now in this case, we're going to be looking at making a couple more purchases. So we have here on June 18, we made another purchase of 100 toys. And then we also made one on June 23rd. And then on June 30th, now we have a new ending total, okay, of 60 toys left in inventory, okay? So again, when we recognize our purchases, right, before anything happens, we got to fill out that little inventory on hand when it comes to beginning inventory. But with that being said, right, I don't have room to show you what happens, but general rule of thumb is you want to make sure that you place your beginning inventory in your worksheet first. Okay. Once you've done that, then we can go ahead and complete the rest of our purchases. So again, here on June 18, June 18, we purchase 100 items at $1.27, right? Purchase price is $1.27 plus our freight of 25 to give us a total of $1.52. All right. Of course, we still need to do our cost per item, which again is going to be $1.52. It's going to be 152 divided by 100. So there's our next batch that we purchase. It's going to be technically our second batch if you count your beginning inventory as your first batch. Then the next one, of course, we have the same exact scenario. I'm not same exact scenario, but we have another purchase of inventory on the 25th, which in this case, it's going to cost me a total of $130 plus my $26 of freight, giving me $156. Giving me a total cost per item to be $1.56, okay? So again, we only did a total of 2 purchases and a transfer of beginning balance in of the 80 toys from the very beginning on the 15th. So now this is where we're going to calculate our total purchases. Remember, our purchases are separate from what we actually originally have in our inventory. So in this case, we're only calculating what we purchased in general. So again, here you go, 200 items costing me $257 plus a total of $51 of freight, giving me a grand total of $308. Okay, and we're going to take those numbers and plug them right back into our little worksheet down here. Now, of course, again, no returns or allowances. So at the end of the day, we're still looking at net purchases of being 200 items at $308. Okay. But this time, instead of going ahead and process it through, we do have beginning inventory of the 80 items, which we've calculated as or considered as one of our first batches that we have. So by doing that, now we have now we can calculate our total goods available. Okay, we add together our beginning inventory plus the inventory that we purchased, giving us a grand total of 280 items available to sell. Okay, and then 120 plus 308 is going to give you 428. Okay. Now, of course, with our scenario, we know that by the end of June 30th, we have a total of 60 toys, which the cost of goods sold, if we have 280 and we have 60 remaining, you just subtract those two numbers and you're going to get a total of 220 items sold. All right. So now we're going to take a look again at our worksheet here. So here, of course, this is just so visually, we have 3 batches that we're dealing with, okay? We have 2 batches that we purchased, and then we have 1 that we transferred from the previous inventory worksheet or our beginning inventory. So just exactly how Lifo works is we're actually going to start from the bottom and make our way up to the top. So in this case, we are actually getting rid of our purchased items first. And then if we make it up to the very top, where it's our beginning inventory, that's where we're going to actually take those out. Now, again, how to calculate that is going to be the first 100, obviously, is going to be for the 156. Then the second one's going to be another 100 for the 152. And then lastly, because we are selling a total of 220 items, boom, now we need to also dip into our very, very beginning inventory, right? We need to take 20 items out of the 80 items, which costs us a total of $1.50, and that's going to give us a grand total of $30 again. So looking at this, if we calculate our grand total, we should have a total of 220 items sold, and it should cost us a total of $338, okay? Leaving our ending inventory, which was our beginning inventory that we transferred over, to be 60 units at $1.50, which we know to be a grand total of $90, okay? So, again, scenario is the same, except this time, instead of getting rid of our beginning inventory first, we're actually going to start from the bottom, from our latest purchases, and make our way up to the top. So start from the bottom and make your way up to the top, okay? And again, because we are dealing with periodic inventory, we need to complete another conversion entry. And this time, you need to remember, because we're dealing with beginning inventory and we have an ending inventory, you need to make sure that you add that beginning inventory in there to in order to make our journal be even on both sides. So again, we're looking at the goods available to sell, okay? So in this case, now, if you understand it this way, why is it that I'm dumping all of my beginning inventory when my beginning inventory is actually going to be my ending inventory? In this case, this is just theoretical. This isn't like for real kind of situation. You're just going to have to imagine that you're going to prepare all your goods available. So that means your purchase expense bucket is in one, your freight expense bucket is in number 2, and your total inventory from the old batch is going to be your your second bucket, right? And how you're going to transfer them is, okay, well, I'm going to dump them all into one bucket and then slowly transfer them out. So pretty much I'm mixing them up. And then at the end of the day, when you solve for your ending inventory, that's what's going to be reflecting in your actual inventory. So, I mean, if you do it, if you think about it hypothetically, you're actually not touching you're actually not going to touch your inventory on hand. Okay? But theoretically, this is what we have to journalize. We have to get rid of our beginning inventory and transfer it back into our ending inventory. Okay? So that's just a little, so this is how you complete Lifo utilizing or having beginning inventory. Okay? Any questions in regards to chapter 5.4? No? Okay, so the course review here is again journalizing a purchase and then also completing a conversion. All right. It's kind of hard to wrap up to cost something out, but I'll think of something, okay? So any questions in regards to 5.4? Okay. So let's go ahead and get our example started. So I'm going to pull up example number 1, or it's just called 5.4 exercises. Here's my inventory worksheet for question number 1. And I'm going to go ahead and make it a little bigger. There you go. So for our 5.4 exercises, it's pretty much going to be rinse and repeat, except, again, with the notion that we need to do our calculations a little different. Okay? So, so number 1, on April 5th, you purchased a total of 1,000 units at $5 each, with freight cost with $100. So on April 5th, we have 1,000 items at $5 with a freight of 100. So how am I going to fill out the rest of my worksheet? Or in this case, what is my what is my purchase price going to be?
5,000. 5,000.
Yes, 5,000. And what's my total purchase? What's my total cost going to be?
5,100.
Yes, 5,100. And then what is my cost per item going to be? $5.10. Yes. Okay, good. Now, next scenario here is on April 10th. We purchased 750 units at $5.75 each with a freight of 75. So again, April 10, we have 75 units at $5.75 each with a freight of 75. So what is my total purchase price going to be?
43,1250.
Good. And then my total cost is going to be?
4,387.50.
$387.50. Okay. And then what is my cost per item going to be here?
5.85.
$5.85. Yes. Okay. Next scenario here is on April 20th. We made a purchase of 200 units at $6 with a freight of 20. Okay, so April 20, 200 at $6 with a freight of 20. So what is my total purchase price here?
1,200.
1,200. Good. And then my total is going to be
1,220.
good. Bringing our cost per item to be
$6.10.
$6.10. Okay. And then let's see what happened on April 25th. You purchased another 500 units at $6.25 each with a freight costing you 50. Oops. 500 units. So 425, 500 units at $6.25 with a freight of 50. So that brings my total my purchase price to be
3,125.
good. And then lastly, my total cost is going to be
3,175.
and then my cost per item is going to be
6.25.
okay, $6.35. And then lastly, our last scenario here is going to be on April 30th. You have a total of 600 units left on hand. So let me go ahead and plug that in at the bottom for my ending inventory to be 600. Okay. Now that we finally reached April 30th, what is the first thing we gotta do? We gotta sum up our columns, correct?
Yes.
So how many items did I purchase in total?
2,450.
2,450. So let me go ahead and highlight all this. There you go, 2,450. How much was my total purchase price?
13,637.50.
Yes. And how much was my total freight?
245.
Okay. And then lastly, what was my total cost?
13,882.50.
Okay. So again, we don't need this column. And I'm going to format these real quick. Okay. So there you go. So now that we have this part, let's go ahead and solve for the bottom half. So How much total how much total items did I purchase?
2450.
2450, costing me
13,637.50.
okay. In this case, we don't have any purchase returns or allowances. So what's going to happen is we're going to take this, we're going to subtract any purchase returns and allowances, which gives us basically the same number. Okay. And then now we need to introduce freight. Okay, so freight again has no effect on quantity, but it does have effect on the actual cost. So we know that it's $245. Okay, so that's going to give us now, so we're just going to add these numbers together. Okay, we're going to add the 13,637 plus the 245 to give us a grand total of 13,882.50, which is our total purchases, and we can verify that right up here. Okay. Of course, we don't have beginning inventory because we're assuming we're starting our inventory in April. Okay. So now we're going to carry these numbers from above down. And now we're going to calculate our total goods available, which is your beginning balance plus your net purchases. So in this case, because we don't have any, it's going to reflect the same. We know that we were given that at the end of the month, we recognize that we have 600 items available. So let's go ahead and solve for the cost of goods sold. How many items did I sell?
1850.
1850, okay? So then this 1850 is going to be what we're going to be actually solving for. Okay, so let me go ahead and highlight all of this. And I'm going to carry them across. Okay, so now that we're looking at our batches, okay, so we have a total of 4 batches. If we're doing LIFO, okay, which batch are we actually going to utilize first or get rid of first?
April 25th.
The last one that we just purchased, which is April 25th. Okay, so here, April 25th, we have a total of 500 units. Okay, so again, I'm doing this for class purposes only. So 500 units. Okay, and it's going to cost me a total of $6.35. Remember, we're focusing on the cost per item, not the original price that we purchased it for. We need to make sure that we have the cost per item, which entails, everything that's included. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and enter in 3175. Okay, but that's us only selling 500 units. So we just only got rid of 1 batch. How much more do we need to sell?
1350.
Yes, 1350. So now that my last batch is eliminated, what comes next?
April 20th.
Correct. So at $200, okay, and it's going to cost me $6.10. So what is my total going to be here? Since we're getting rid of the whole batch here, is for the 1220. Okay. Now we only sold a total of 700. We need more to sell. So what's the next batch we're actually going to be looking at?
750, April 10th.
750. Okay. Now, are we taking the whole 750?
Yes.
Yes, because it only got us to get us to a total of $14.50. So yes, we're gonna get rid of another entire batch. Sorry, I can't. Okay, and that $7.50 cost me a total of $6.35 each, bringing me a grand total of the $4,387. Now, last but not least, how many more items do I have to sell? We already got rid of 3 batches, so I only have 1 batch remaining for my 1,000 that I originally purchased in the first place. How many out of that do I need to take out?
400.
We need to take exactly 400 out. Okay, so there you go, to get us exactly $18.50. Now, how much does it cost me to sell one of those items?
$5.10.
$5.10. Okay, which should in fact get you a grand total of $2,040. Okay, and because I've already entered in my equal sum already, every time I add something, they just add up the whole column together. So I have $18.50 giving me a grand total of $10,822.50. Okay. And then lastly, how do you solve for the ending inventory?
Cost of goods sold minus the amount.
Minus which amount?
Goods available.
Yes, you take your goods available, you're going to subtract out, because you solved for cost of goods sold, right? That's just the easiest and most accurate way to do it. And then there you go. You should have 3,060 left. Okay, so now that we finally solved for our inventory, right? Everything matches up, everything aligns. So what comes next? Yes, you need to journalize this conversion entry. So I'm going to go ahead and, okay, on April 30th, okay, we have, I'm going to put it in caps. We have inventory. Okay, what else do we have?
Purchase price. Purchase expense.
Okay, so purchase expense is actually going to go down here.
Cost of goods sold.
Yes, cost of goods sold. And then okay, so now we got to go ahead and do our debits and credits. How much was my inventory? Or in this case, how much was my ending inventory?
3,060.
Mm-hmm. And then how much was my cost of goods sold?
10,822.50.
Good. And then what was my total purchases?
13,882.50.
Okay, that's also including freight.
Sorry, 13,637.50.
Good. Okay, and then lastly, how much was freight?
245.
There you go. All right, and then of course, number one rule of thumb is we need to confirm that our debits match our credits. Okay, which in this case, they do match because it should equal a total of the 13,882.50, which is also known as your total goods available. Okay, so that's also a one-way key factor that you did your calculation correct, that it does match your total goods available. Okay, good, good, good. All right. So now we're going to go ahead and continue the next portion, which is going to be looking at having a beginning inventory. Okay? So now that we've completed this section here, the next question says that for this scenario, you're going to continue on with the inventory for the purchases in May. So first thing that you recognize here is that on April 30th, you have a total of 600 units left on hand. So let's go ahead and visit that. Let's look at that section in our worksheet. Okay, so if we look at here, we actually got rid of the last 3 items. So we only have 1 item that we can transfer over. So it's going to be just this row right here. And we actually know how much that is, right? We know that the 600 remaining should equal that 3060. So let's go ahead and transfer this amount over. So our quantity in our inventory on hand is going to be the 600. And it's going to cost me, I think it was, what, $5.10?
Yes.
Okay, and then we're going to multiply that across to give us a total of the,
3060.
yes, the 3060. Okay, and of course I'm just going to go ahead and carry this down here as well because there's only 1 batch and 1 batch only. Oop, 1 more over. Okay, so that's how much inventory we actually have on hand. Okay, so now we can go ahead and get started with the rest of the scenario. So on May 5th, we purchased another 500 units at $6.25 each with a freight of 50. So May 5th, 500 units, $6.25 each with a freight of 50. Oh, whoa, sorry about that, guys. Come on, mouse. There you go. Okay. So again, so we have 500 items. Okay, so what's my total purchase price going to be here?
3125.
Yes. And then my total my total cost.
3175.
And my cost per item.
635.
Oops, I hit the date. Let me go ahead and shrink this again a little more. All right. Go ahead and fix this error real quick. So, okay. Okay, and then I'm gonna, I have to fix this cell because I accidentally did something here. So, let me make it number, and then, there we go. Okay, let me format my entire worksheet again as well while I'm at it. Okay, so there you go. All right, so then what happened on May 10? We purchased another 800 units at $6 and freight cost us $80. So May 10, 800 units at $6 with a freight of 80. So what's my total purchase price going to be here?
4,800.
4,800. And my total cost
4,880.
and my cost per item
610.
610. Okay. And then now let's go ahead and see what happened next. On May 20th, we purchased 300 units at $6.15 with a freight cost of 15. So May 20th, we purchased 300 units at $6.15 with a freight of 15. So what's my total purchase price going to be here?
1845.
Okay. And my total cost?
1860.
And then lastly, my cost per item?
The 620.
Mm-hmm. And then let's see what happened next. So then on May 25th, we also purchased another additional 100 items at $6.30 each with a freight cost of $5. So May 25th, we have 100 items costing me $6.30 with a freight of $5. So what's my total purchase price going to be here?
630.
$6.30. Okay. Plus my freight gives me a grand total of
635.
bringing my total cost per item to be
6.5.
6.35. Okay. And then lastly, it says on May 31st, you have a total of 400 units on hand. So if I have a total of 400 units on hand, I'm going to go ahead and plug this in right here. Okay. Now that I'm done and I'm solved for the rest for my scenario, let's go ahead and solve each column. So what is the total, what's my total quantity?
7.
1,700.
Yes.
What's my total purchases?
And 4.
And then my freight,
150.
and then my total cost.
10,550.
Good. So again, we don't need this one. I'm going to reformat this. Okay. So there you go. Okay, so now we can go ahead and solve for this little bottom window down here. So in this case, what was my total purchases? It was for the 1,700 at my 1040. They have no returns or allowances, so our number should reflect the same. Okay. We have freight, which does have no effect on quantity, but it does affect our cost. So now I need to add these two together. So I have a total 1,700, but costing me a total of the 10,550. Okay. Now, the next thing that we have is we do have beginning inventory, right? How much is it?
600.
Okay, at how much?
3,785.
3,785. Where did you get that number from?
Sorry, 3,060.
Correct, right? We're looking at Lifo now, not FIFO. That was the previous exercise. Okay, remember now it's a little different because the numbers are not the same. They're slightly less than it was before. So again, we have a total of 600 items at $3,060. Okay, we're gonna carry our purchase price over, or our purchases, net purchases, and now we're gonna add them to get our total goods available. So how much total goods do I have available to sell?
$2,300.
Okay, costing me a total of
13,610.
yes, 13,610 is going to be our goods available. Okay. And as just mentioned from the scenario, we have a total of 400 items available in our inventory now. So what's my total what's my total items that I sold?
19.
Okay, yes.
1,009.
Yes. 19.
I got a question.
Yes.
Beginning balance we got 600. Where do we get the 3,060?
That's what we transferred over, right? If it cost us $1, if it cost us $5.10, we're gonna calculate it to get us up the 3060, which we solved in our previous one, right? Our ending balance is right here, the 600 for the 3060, right? And we know that we sold these batches, so we're only remaining this batch. And we know that it's going to be $5.10 to sell each item in this batch right here, okay? All right, so now we're finally here. We have all the information and we are ready to calculate our total cost of goods sold. So let me go ahead and hit it like that and highlight all this. Okay, so looking at our information here, which batch are you actually going to get rid of first?
May 25th.
May 25th. Yes, we don't ever touch beginning inventory because you just pretend the beginning inventory is essentially the very first batch that you have. So in this case, our last batch that we purchased was for that 100 items at $6.35 each. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and reference everything. At 635, bringing me a grand total of this. Okay, and I'm gonna drag this formula down. Okay. Now that we sold only our first 100, we still got a lot to go. So what's the next batch that we're actually going to be taking from?
May 20th, the 300.
Perfect. The 300 on May 20th. Okay. And that cost me a total of it cost me
18.
1860. Okay. So now that we have only 400 that we sold. So which batch are we going to take out next?
May 10th.
May 10 for the 800. Okay. And that cost me
48.80.
correct. So now we are climbing up and we only see that we have only 1,200 items sold. So how many more items do we need to sell? 700. Now, if we have 700 to sell, right? What does our first batch reflect?
500.
500. So now we know not only do we need to take 500, we also need to take 200 from our beginning inventory. So let me see. Since we're taking out the entire batch right here of the 500, we can get rid of that entire amount. Okay. And then now we are taking from our actual beginning inventory, okay, of our $5.10, which gives us 1020. So notice this, okay? If you guys can actually picture this, another quicker way to see is, well, if this is my last in and first to go, right? If I were to just imagine it this way, if I sold a total of 1,900, right? My total net purchases already was already 1,700. So I could have just easily just taken this whole batch here without having to break it down one item at a time, because I know I got rid of this entire net purchases, right? I got rid of this whole entire thing because this whole thing I bought was only 1,700 items. I sold a total of 1,900, okay? But again, this is for, showing you guys, especially for those who this is your first time looking at it. So with that being said, it's easier to just break it down so you don't lose track or you don't get confused on certain things, because you can't actually go in here and actually start changing numbers, because if you do, then every formula that you place in here starts going to go out of balance and go whack. So you can do this, because if you are utilizing your own worksheet and you are the inventory manager, what you can do is you can highlight the rows and kind of, if it makes it easier for you to visualize it, to just actually strike them through or fill them in, okay? So here, now we have a grand total of our 1,900 items costing me a grand total of the $11,570 sold, okay? Last but not least, what is my total ending inventory? Cost.
2040.
So same thing here. Okay, so again, if I imagine it, if I wanted to solve it the other way, I could have just done 400 times the 510 to give me my 2040. And that would have been the same exact as
That
if...
way I find out how you said last time, 400 times 510, it is way how I find out.
Perfect. Now, you want to be careful utilizing it that way, because when we actually move into looking at a real life scenario, right, we're going to be looking at numbers that actually are not rounded. These ones is because I planned this out already, that every single time we calculated the cost per item, it's rounded already, as in like they come out even. When we deal with numbers that have a long number or it doesn't go into evenly, you have the choice. Do you want to choose to round, or do you want to leave each cost per item there's like each item could be 6.357777924, So, but because the concept here is I prefer you to round towards the end of when you actually solve for your ending inventory. Reason being is because if you do end up selling thousands and thousands of items, you're actually going to be lucking out and missing. You might be costing yourself a higher price and losing yourself a lot of profit. Okay, so it's just we'll talk about it when we reach that bridge. But for now, yes, you can do it that way, but you can get a couple errors because some things you might be off by a penny or off by 2 pennies even if you do that way. But because for this purpose of this case, everything's evened out, so yes, you can do it that way. All right, so now that we finally solved for our little thing here, okay, we're going to go ahead and complete our conversion entry. So just to save time, I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste these cells. So what you can do too is, because if you guys are using Excel or even the worksheet itself, the regular worksheet, as long as you're able to utilize the computer software, you're able to copy and paste to take as many shortcuts as you can. And even if you make a misspelling, you can go back and fix it. Now remember, if you are doing manual bookkeeping where you're actually using a paper and pen, you have to be very careful on what you write and not to scratch it out, okay? But of course, this is practice purposes only, so I'm not going to I'm not going to scream at you if you do make a mistake or scratch it out. Just know that if you are going to be going into working for another company, that they're not going to be using paper and pen anymore, but that doesn't mean you can't practice using pen and paper, okay? So again, I copied and pasted it because I'm using Excel, so I can make it my transaction a lot quicker because I know exactly what I need. I need the same exact stuff that I need in the previous one, except I need one more account. And what was that extra account that I need?
Beginning inventory.
The beginning inventory, correct. So let's go ahead and solve for each one. So what was my total ending inventory?
2040.
2040. What was my cost of goods sold?
11.
Mm-hmm.
5, 7.
Mm-hmm. What was my total purchases?
10,400.
10,400.
Good. And then what was my total freight?
150.
150. And then lastly, what was my actual beginning inventory that I had?
3060.
3060. So there you go. I'm going to go ahead and double confirm that my debits equal my credits here. Oh, didn't even press enter. Equals sum.
13,610.
Yes, 13,610. And is that equal on both sides? 13,610. And that number is exactly what your goods available was. So that's a way you can double check, confirm the accuracy of your accounting is that all of your stuff is starting to look and match and everything. So good. Yay, we've completed exercise number 1. Okay, so right now it's going to be 9:45. Go ahead and take a nice 20-minute break. So be back by 10 at 10. And we'll go ahead and finish up the exercise number 2. Okay.